The masks begin to fall off. The Chinese biological laboratory in Wuhan is owned by GlaxoSmithKline, which accidentally owns Pfizer. The one who makes the vaccine against the virus, which accidentally started at the Wuhan Biological Lab and which was accidentally funded by Dr. Fauci, who accidentally promotes the vaccine. GlaxoSmithKline is accidentally managed by the finance division of BlackRock, which accidentally manages the finances of the Open Foundation company, Soros Foundation, which accidentally manages the French AXA. Soros accidentally owns the German company Winterthur, which accidentally built a Chinese laboratory in Wuhan and was bought by the German Alliance, which coincidentally has Vanguard as a shareholder, who coincidentally is a shareholder of BlackRock, which coincidentally controls central banks and manages about a third of global investment capital. BlackRock is also coincidentally a major shareholder of Microsoft, owned by Bill Gates, who coincidentally is a shareholder of Pfizer, which, remember, sells a miracle vaccine, and coincidentally is now the first sponsor of the WHO. Now you understand how a dead bat sold in a wet market in China has infected the whole planet.
This old man. This is America. Don't catch you slipping now. Don't catch you slipping now. This is America. This is America. Don't catch you slipping now. I want pizza.
Start eating babies. There's too much CO2. We need to eat the babies. There's too much CO2. We need to eat the babies.
What the hell did you put in that vaccine?
And when this vaccine fails, I'll be the scapegoat.
We created a flu that sparked the demand for a vaccine that doesn't work. After everyone in the country is vaccinated.
And the world?
He'll have murdered millions.
Nope, you don't have it.
We need to go now before that vaccine ships and more people die.
Give a certain percentage of the population a fatal illness, and you make sure it's genetic. See, that was the exciting part. You pass it down. So if you have children before you die. Becky, do you have children? How much evil do you have to do good? People are driven by the need to know what happens next. Do you want to know what happens next? Your father created a world-changing, not world-ending, a world-changing, world-improving omnivirus. And we have taken that virus and embedded it in the vaccine of this Stearns flu.
I knew it. I knew it. He created a panic and now everybody's begging for the vaccine.
No. Demanding it. With all the entitlement of a first world country.
Yes. And now we have exactly what we want. Hundreds of millions of Americans lining up, offering us their arms, and letting us give them our creation.
I'm pretty sure when every vaccinated person starts dying, they'll trace it back to undetectable virus or not.
You've all been very busy. You're all very sharp. Are you sure none of you would like to come and work for me? No? Better than dying a terrible, violent death? Then understand this. What we are doing is far bigger than death.
Wait, this virus is not deadly.
It looks pretty damn deadly.
Tell me this. What have you done today to earn your place in this crowded world? Exactly. Everything I do is a cure. for our current situation.
Wait, how's it a cure? You're killing people.
I told you it does not kill. That was the amazing epiphany we had. We didn't have to kill to accomplish our goal.
Which is what?
We intend to stop human reproduction for 3 generations. The busy, endless global assembly line of babies will grind to a halt.
You're sterilizing people?
Huh?
I'm obviously going to be completely biased. Perhaps it's the New Zealand media contingent that you should ask who's in the room. You know, I think for us it was a way of demonstrating what it looks like when you move just beyond measures like GDP. And so when we were making our decisions around how we allocated the country's resources, when you start looking beyond simple cost-benefit analysis and actually look at the cost-benefit across human potential, then you start making record investments in things like homelessness and mental health and combating domestic violence and sexual violence. When we just applied an equation that looked at well-being and environmental well-being, then those are the natural outcomes. Those are the natural decisions you made.
Would you consider ankle bracelets for people in self-isolation?
Now, it was the first for us and we'll keep doing it. But I do hope that other countries look to it as a potential model.
A question for you. Did you receive my notice of cease and desist?
It's not your time. Sorry,
I understand this. Sorry. No. You were served.
Don't come near me.
With a notice to cease and desist. I captured this last year, and I captured everything.
But what we're seeing in the laboratory after people get these shots, we're seeing a very concerning locked-in low profile of these important killer T cells that you want in your body. It's almost a reverse HIV. In HIV, you lose your helper T cells, your CD4 cells. In this virus post-vaccine, what we're seeing is a drop in your killer T cells, your CD8 cells. And what do CD8 cells do? They keep all other viruses in check. What am I seeing in the laboratory? I'm seeing an uptick of herpes family viruses. I'm seeing herpes, I'm seeing shingles, I'm seeing mono, I'm seeing a huge uptick in human papillomavirus in the cervical biopsies and the cervical pap smears in women. In addition to that, there's a little infectious bump that kids get called molluscum contagiosum. What do you need to keep that in check? You need CD8 killer T cells. I am seeing a 20 times increase in individuals over the age of 50 of this little bump and rash. That's innocuous, but what it tells me is the immune status of these individuals who have gotten the shot. We're literally weakening the immune system of these individuals. Now, most concerning of all is there's a pattern of these types of immune cells in the body that keep cancer in check. Well, since January 1, in the laboratory, I've seen a 20 times increase of endometrial cancers over what I see on an annual basis. A 20 times increase. I'm not exaggerating at all. Because I look at my numbers year over year. I'm like, gosh, I've never seen this many endometrial cancers before. I'm seeing invasive melanomas in younger patients. Normally we catch those early and they're thin melanomas. I'm seeing thick melanomas skyrocketing in the last month or two. I'm already seeing the early signals. And we are modifying the immune system to a weakened state. Great study out of Germany that looked at these profiles on young individuals after the Pfizer, showing this locked in, and we don't know how long. Maybe the immune system, is going to regenerate and those ratios will go back up. But who's studying it? And where are the long-term trials? 2 months, 4 months? How long is this profile locked in? We don't know. And how long is it going to last? 2-3 years? What is going to be the uptick in these solid tumor cancers over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years? We don't know. I can predict. I'm a data analyst. I'm not a politician. I look at data, and I'm already seeing concerning patterns.
So I'll just give you quickly my experience. My team has directly treated successfully 6,000 patients. I've trained hundreds of physicians who are now training their students. And as a cumulative group, we've treated millions of patients successfully. President Trump was my patient. Rudy Giuliani was my patient. Reb Chaim Kanevsky has been my patient. Mr. Litzman, your health minister of Israel last year, was my patient. I'm just telling you which people have contacted me for care. including President Bolsonaro of Brazil. Now, my experience has given me a very unique perspective in approaching COVID-19, which is basically keeping people out of the hospital. I would like to describe, regarding children, the only reason you would want to treat a child is if you believe in child sacrifice, or even the Baudelaire. If you want to be mocked of children like a carbon, of a it's a very good reason to give them the shot. Otherwise, there's no necessity. Let me explain. Anytime you evaluate any therapeutic, you need to look at it from three perspectives. Is it safe? Does it work? And do you need it? Just because you have a capability doesn't mean that you have to use it. There has to be a medical necessity. There has to be a need for it. You look at the CDC, the statistics for children under the age of 18 that are healthy, the survival rate is 99.998% survival rate with no treatment. Just like Dr. Yudin said, the influenza virus is more dangerous to children than COVID-19. And he made an estimate that per million, 100 children would die from the vaccination.
There's already a list of close to 200 businesses in Seattle that won't even service you unless you have vaccine proof before walking in the door. We are quickly headed toward a place in our society where the biological medical state micromanages the individual liberty and freedom of people just like you and just like me. I don't think the vaccine's the mark. I don't think you can prove that scripturally. I think it's pretty stupid to say. But I am concerned of our government and its increase in totalitarian, authoritarian oversight that is getting so large that it seeks to micromanage and punish even people of religious faith who object for various reasons. Friend, that's where we are as a country. It's not a conspiracy anymore. I told y'all last week I need new conspiracies because all the ones I used to believe are now happening in the world around us. I'm not anti-vax. I'm anti-big government micromanaging your personal life. I'm anti a government that's big enough to give you everything you ever hoped, dreamed, or desired, and big enough to take it away. I'm against a government that incentivizes people not to work because it thinks it can just print money till kingdom come without any type of economic repercussions. I'm against a government that says trust the science, but believes men can be women and women can be men.
If I were the devil, if I were the devil, if I were the prince of darkness, I'd want to engulf the whole world in darkness, and I'd have 1/3 of its real estate and 4/5 of its population, but I wouldn't be happy until I had seized the ripest apple on the tree. So I'd set about, however necessary, to take over the United States. I'd subvert the churches first. I'd begin with a campaign of whispers. With the wisdom of a serpent, I would whisper to you as I whispered to Eve, do as you please. To the young, I would whisper that the Bible is a myth. I would convince them that man created God instead of the other way around. I would confide that what's bad is good and what's good is square. And the old I would teach to pray after me, Our Father, which art in Washington. And then I'd get organized. I'd educate authors in how to make lurid literature exciting so that anything else would appear dull and uninteresting. I'd threaten TV with dirtier movies and vice versa. I'd peddle narcotics to whom I could. I'd sell alcohol to ladies and gentlemen of distinction. I'd tranquilize the rest with pills. If I were the devil, I'd soon have families at war with themselves, churches at war with themselves, and nations at war with themselves, until each in its turn was consumed. And with promises of higher ratings, I'd have mesmerizing media fanning the flames. If I were the devil, I would encourage schools to refine young intellects, but neglect to discipline emotions. Just let those run wild. Until before you knew it, you'd have to have drug-sniffing dogs and metal detectors at every schoolhouse door. Within a decade, I'd have prisons overflowing. I'd have judges promoting pornography. Soon I could evict God from the courthouse, then from the schoolhouse, and then from the houses of Congress. And in his own churches, I would substitute psychology for religion and deify science. I would lure priests and pastors into misusing boys and girls and church money. If I were the devil, I'd make the symbol of Easter an egg and the symbol of Christmas a bottle. If I were the devil, I'd take from those who have and give to those who wanted until I had killed the incentive of the ambitious. And what'll you bet? I couldn't get whole states to promote gambling as the way to get rich. I would caution against extremes in hard work, in patriotism, in moral conduct. I would convince the young that marriage is old-fashioned, that swinging is more fun, that what you see on TV is the way to be. And thus I could undress you in public, and I could lure you into bed with diseases for which there is no cure. In other words, if I were the devil, I'd just keep right on doing what he's...
Maurice Strong, a Canadian oil and businessman, was the president of Canada's Power Corporation, pushing the climate change agenda in the 1960s. What you may not know is that Maurice was also a big power player in Tavistock's social engineering machine, and he held the Conference of 1980. He gathered occult think tankers, social engineers, cybernetic experts, and futurologists to discuss what they wanted to see happen in the 1980s. Here is a list for the Tavistock Conference of 1980. Women entering the corporate world, racially mixed breeding, the rise of Oprah Winfrey to normalize mixed marriage, youth rebellion, lesbian moms, the emergence of the fake green movement, the importance of meditation and Kabbalah to confuse Christians, the infiltration of hip-hop with gangster rap, and the New Age movement. What do you think, America? Were they successful in the 1980s? Amazing, isn't it? Do you think it is a coincidence that we started calling America the homeland after 9/11? And then we had Showtime with its popular show, Homeland? Did you know the word homeland comes straight out of the Communist Manifesto? These social scientist wizards understand you better than you understand yourself. They can profile any audience to accept lies, and they know you won't even question it. Unless, of course, you have broken your programming. When we think of the word intelligence, we usually think Mossad, CIA, MI6, but we never think Tavistock. Did you know that the majority of CIA and MI6 operatives get their training at Tavistock? Here is a list of what they learn: metaphysics, mind control, behavior modification strategy, ESP, hypnotism, esoteric knowledge, Satanism, and Manichaean theology, which is understanding the duality of good and evil. So how did this happen? Let's go back to the beginning. Our Tavistock story begins in the late 1800s with Arthur Sharep Spiridovich, a white Russian loyalist who was anti-communist. He was a Russian general and claimed to be well-versed in international affairs and predicted huge world events. In 1902, he warned kings and dukes about future assassination attempts, and he was right. He also predicted the First World War due to his knowledge about the hidden hand, in which he called a secret group of 300 Jewish families controlling the world events. Spiridovich emigrated to New York and wrote the book Secret World Government. He was found dead in his hotel room in 1926 at the age of 59 from suicide. So who was this secret group of Jews? Spiridovich was talking about the Committee of 300. Walter Rathenau, a German politician, once said, 300 men, all of whom know one another, guide the economic destinies of the continent and seek their successors from within their own environment. Dr. John Coleman was a British intelligence officer who gained access to a private British museum in London. It was here that Coleman discovered the highly classified documents of Tavistock. It angered him so much he spent 5 years reading and deciphering them, and wrote the book, The Tavistock Institution of Human Relations. Tavistock was secretly started in 1913 and was funded by the British monarchy, the Milner Group, the Rockefellers, and the Rothschilds. Tavistock's first purpose was to create propaganda to start a war between Britain and Germany. The motivation behind the war was inspired by Germany's rapid progress on surpassing Britain with economic power. Tavistock's second purpose was to infiltrate America by establishing a centralized bank, removing the gold standard, and the degradation of women and religion. This group's mission was to establish a complete breakdown of America's values to enslave us. To jumpstart the program, they hired Edward Bernays. Bernays was the nephew of Sigmund Freud and was the father of public relations. He wrote 3 books, Crystallizing Public Opinion, Propaganda, and The Engineering of Consent. Bernays believed people were so irrational, and he believed so strongly in crowd psychology that he could convince masses of people to do almost anything. Edward Bernays was a Tavistock coach and advisor to President Woodrow Wilson. Wilson ran and won the presidency on the promise that he would keep America out of war. But with the infiltration of Bernays, he persuaded Congress to declare war on Germany and started the First World War. And on December 23, 1913, while all Americans were getting ready to celebrate Christmas, Woodrow Wilson signed the Federal Reserve Act, a law that created the Federal Reserve System, the central banking system of the United States. This led to effectively abolishing the gold standard. It was now 1933, and Tavistock's mission was already 50% complete. The Central Bank of America was responsible for the Great Depression and the global financial crisis of 2007. The Federal Reserve violates constitutional law because their policymakers are handpicked by people behind the Federal Reserve. Their meetings are secret, and there is no transparency to what they are doing. In 1932, an outspoken critic of the Fed, Louis T. McFadden, said, "We have in this country one of the most corrupt institutions the world has ever known. I refer to the Federal Reserve Board and Bank. This evil institution has impoverished and ruined the people of the United States through its corrupt practices of the money vultures who control it." After the wars and the establishment of the central bank, America started to see moral decline through what historians call the New Morality, or otherwise known as the birth of liberalism. It was President Ronald Reagan that once said, "If fascism ever came to America, it will come in the name of liberalism." In the 20s, known as the Decade of Decadence, we saw the emergence of the flapper. Women were now cursing, smoking, drinking, wearing revealing clothing, and the term loose entered into the zeitgeist. This was a cause and effect directly from advertising and Tavistock music, which was pushed from these think tanks. In the 1930s, homosexuality and lesbianism became rampant, not out of any inner or latent desires, but as a means to shock the old establishment during the Great Depression. During the Great Depression, the nation was numb. G.K. Chesterton, a writer and philosopher, said, "The moral, spiritual, racial, economic, cultural bankruptcy we are in today is not some social phenomenon, but rather the outcome of a carefully planned Tavistock program." The birth of MIT, the National Institute of Mental Health, the Stanford Research Center, and Wharton School of Economics were founded by Dr. Kurt Lewin, John Rawlings Rees, and Margaret Mead, arguably the best Tavistock social engineers of all time. Believe it or not, through the minds of these leaders came the brainwashing and propaganda for World War II, Vietnam, the Korean War, the 2 Gulf Wars, and every war that followed after. According to Dr. Coleman, the best kept secret and research that came out of Tavistock is the 3-system response. The 3-system response is how the population reacts to stress resulting from a contrived situation. A contrived situation is a crisis management exercise for world leaders. During a crisis, the first response is superficiality, which is the condition that manifests when a group reacts to a threat by adopting shallow advertising and slogans, which they attempt to pass off as ideals. Because the cause of the crisis is not identified, it leaves the population confused, and this phase can last as long as the controller wants it to. The second phase is called fragmentation, in which panic strikes and social cohesion falls apart. This results in society to break up into small groups, forming different attitudes and beliefs due to media manipulation. No one is on the same page, no one is getting the truth, and people become divided and fragmented from each other. This causes civil unrest, protests, verbal fights, physical fights, all caused by humans failing to identify the cause of the crisis. The third phase is called the fantasy trip. This is what Tavistock calls dissociation. In this last phase of the PSYOP, people have been so traumatized from the false flag event that they block it out or lose interest and all hope in humanity. This dissociation causes people to allow their liberties to get taken away, which ushers in communist legislation without a fight. Julius Caesar once said, "Divide and conquer." The powers that be have been using contrived situations and false flag events to shock and traumatize the world since the beginning of time. The JFK assassination, Waco, the O.J. Simpson car chase, Columbine, 9/11, Sandy Hook, the Las Vegas shooting, and don't even get me started on crisis actors. You can research that one. Do you think all of these shootings at schools and post offices, churches, concerts, and shopping malls were all just coincidence? According to Dr. Coleman, they were carried out by mind-controlled subjects who were carefully profiled, sought after, and put on dangerous mood-altering drugs like Ritalin, and controlled by DARPA computer programmers. Remember the national story about Molly Tibbetts, the jogger who disappeared for a month and was found dead in a cornfield from Iowa? At first, her alleged killer said he heard voices in his head, and the media had a heyday with him saying that. Now you cannot find that anywhere on the internet. Did you know Molly Tibbetts' dad was an architect for the Clinton Foundation? He actually designed the orphanages in Haiti. Also, do a quick internet search of killers who hear voices, and it is astonishing. I also recommend the book Programmed to Kill by David McGowan. When I think about what has happened to women in America, it is easy to see how it has been done in hindsight. From the flappers to pornography, we can see that Tavistock is really good at what they do. Remember 50 Shades of Grey? This was another mind control experiment that you could do in your own bedroom. The pain and fear that comes with sadomasochistic sex causes the brain to flow the blood away from its executive decision-making areas, the frontal cortex, which results in an altered state of consciousness in both the giver and the receiver, like doing cocaine. Do you ever wonder why certain books or movies get propped up? This always raises a red flag for me. Herbert Hoover was the 31st president of the United States. He was a Republican and was reluctant to become involved with the Federal Reserve. He believed in strengthening American business and believed that individual reliance on banks would weaken the economy. There is speculation from Coleman that his reluctance caused the stock market crash of 1929, which led America into the Great Depression, as a punishment to him and the American people. Sounds like history definitely repeats itself. Tavistock engineered the Cuban Missile Crisis as an attempt to sell the FEMA program to JFK. It was another rejection by a president, and Kennedy died that same year. Tavistock immediately signed a contract with NASA to ramp up public opinion on space. Ronald Reagan was another president who was reluctant to fall in line and had an assassination attempt on him. During Reagan's presidency, the Committee of 300 had a secret meeting to make sure that after this presidency, they remained in control with their candidates of their choice. So who was next? George Herbert Walker Bush. He was the former director of the CIA and vice president to Reagan. He was a member of Skull and Bones and was married to Barbara Bush, who keeps fetuses in jars in her home, and who is allegedly Aleister Crowley's daughter by a striking resemblance. Bush gave the famous New World Order speech following the Gulf War of '91. Next, we had a Rhodes Scholar, Bill Clinton, and then George W. Bush, and then Obama. With these presidents comes more social engineering, more false flags, and more corruption at the highest levels. John Coleman said, "We have been brainwashed into believing that communism is the greatest danger we Americans are facing. This is simply not so. The greatest danger arises from the mass of traitors in our midst. Our Constitution warns us to be watchful of the enemy within our own gates. These enemies are servants of the Committee of 300 who occupy the highest positions within our government structure. The United States is where we must begin our fight to turn back the tide threatening to engulf us, and where we must meet and defeat these internal conspirators." Trump campaigned hard, and one of his messages was, "Drain the swamp." This is exactly what he was talking about. He wants to remove the evil from within the government. Out of all the presidents, Trump has been the most difficult for Tavistock. He was discussed in a couple of Tavistock journals written by James McKay, the director for Tavistock Coaching. In 2016, he expressed concern that based on Trump's personality, he would be very difficult to coach. And in 2018, he discussed how Trump is like a trickster. Is this a confession that Trump hasn't fallen in line, but has been steps ahead of the committee? Another modern goal of the Committee of 300 is the emergence of the technotronic era. In the book, Between Two Ages by Brzezinski, he says, "The technotronic era involves the gradual appearance of a more controlled society. Such a society would be dominated by an elite, unrestrained by traditional values. Soon it will be possible to assert almost continuous surveillance over every citizen and maintain up-to-date complete files containing even the most personal information about the citizen. These files will be subject to instantaneous retrieval by the authorities." That's creepy. And who is his daughter? Mika Brzezinski, the talk show host on Morning Joe with Joe Scarborough. This is the guy Trump accused of murdering one of his staffers. The book by Brzezinski also discussed future human cloning and robotoids, people who acted like people and who seemed to be people, but were not people. There are psyops within psyops. Disinformation is everywhere. Corrupt people run amok in our government. This is Tavistock. Today, people are still distracted with what the elite call the bread and circuses. Baseball, football, endless Hollywood, and Social Security. Nothing has changed. The program is so good. If you were trying to explain this to somebody, they would think you are crazy. That is how good the programming is. Because after all, if you don't program your mind, someone will program it for you. And it makes me remember the Tavistock whistleblower, Spiritovich, the man who took his own life at the age of 59. Or did he? Did he know too much? In 2020, looking back, it seems to me that he knew a lot. I will leave you with that to do your own critical thinking. Until then, stay safe out there and don't stop questioning the world around you.
Something waits within the shadows, like an army in the night. Lock the doors and board the windows. Oh,
you look at the symptoms of microwave illness, radiation toxicity, radio frequency toxicity, and look on several sites, you'll see loss of taste, loss of smell, flu-like symptoms, cardiac issues, menstrual cycle problems, reproductive issues. Those sound really familiar, don't they?
Absolutely. Yeah.
The world, because we are starting to put more frequencies around the world that are not conducive to life, us, nature, the plants. Certain frequency, they were able to induce inside a human skin cell the COVID-19 virus particle.
No way.
Yeah. So they knew the idea that frequency can heal DNA and it can actually destroy it depending on which one you use. And they took the Pyramid of Giza, the exact dimensions, and they made a tubular structure out of it because pyramids have a frequency inside that's very healing. So they hung that over the crop. And within 2 cycles of the crop, the plants themselves went back to their original genome that's non-genetically modified.
And I have a friend who had a bunch of orgone stuff, and he went up around these cell phone towers and he buried it in the ground. And he put a remote camera on there. Within 2 hours, SUV thing came up. They had some equipment. They scanned. They found where he buried these things, and they took them out. So orgone and pyramid energy kind of can protect kind of things.
My organs work by the organic resin and minerals absorbing the EMF, RF radiation, the Kashmir effect, and energy then neutralizes the harmful frequencies. The quartz crystals and gemstones compressed by the organic resin have an energy charge which restructures all energy as it passes through the quartz crystals, the piezoelectric effect. This filtrated harmonious energy is then released into the surrounding area where it becomes a more healing, a more beneficial frequency, filtrating the harmful EMF and RF naturally. Please visit OrgonCrystalEnergy.com. Once again, that is OrgonCrystalEnergy.com.